Let us now talk to the Bishop of Chelmsford. I'm really pleased to be speaking to the Bishop this morning because after she was announced as the Bishop of Chelmsford, I think it was about 3 minutes after she was announced as the new Bishop of Chelmsford, she very kindly appeared on the Dave Monk programme and gave me the first interview as the new Bishop of Chelmsford. And the Right Reverend Dr. Guli Francis Decani took her seat in September 2021 after previously serving as the first Bishop of Loughborough. Bishop Guli, good morning.
Good morning.
It's a grand day, isn't it?
It is indeed. It's a day where we're seeing, aren't we, on our TV screens and in our communities, real signs of celebration going on. And the extended holiday period, of course, is one that everybody's enjoying.
Just how important, let's look at it this way to start with. How important has the Queen been for the Church of England during her reign? Because, of course, she is essentially your boss. She is the head of the Church of England, isn't she?
She is what's known as the Supreme Governor of the Church of England. Of course, the head of the church is, we would say, is Jesus Christ, but she is certainly the Supreme Governor. And in that sense, you could, I guess, call her my boss. She is in many ways very significant, I think, because of the way that she has held the office in particular. And the way in which she's allowed her own faith to impact just the very core of who she is, both as an individual but also in her leadership style. She has spoken often of the way in which she takes strength from her faith and how it's enabled her to respond to her calling and even vocation, we might say, in a way that is really an exemplar for all of us. Her sense of the way in which she's lived her life with the kind of big themes around loyalty and faithfulness and service. These are all intrinsic to the life of faith and to the life of the church. So she has been a key figure, of course, in more ways than one.
Yeah, and of course there have been enormous changes since 1952 when she became Queen, not least the ordination of women.
There have indeed been many, many changes. I mean, there's been an extraordinary fast pace of change in life generally, hasn't there? And in society generally, and the church has both needed to respond to that, but also it has needed to change itself. And yes, the changing role of women in society has been reflected in the church as well. I mean, we were arguably a little later than many other organizations and institutions, but we've had women now ordained as priests for about 30 years and as bishops for about 6. And we've seen, I think historically women have always actually played a significant part in the day-to-day life of the church, but it has been good to see them increasingly involved with a voice in the leadership as well. But many, many changes. Changes in the use of technology, greater understanding around the threat to the environment and move towards carbon net zero, which the church is also engaged in. A growing understanding, I think, of our society as being multicultural, multi-ethnic, multi-faith. These are all things that the church has sought to address and respond to, just like many other parts of society.
And quite big, they are quite big challenges, those things, aren't they? Especially, if you look at multiculturalism and multi-faith in our country, that's grown hugely, hasn't it, over the last 70 years? And of course, that is quite a challenge for the Church of England, isn't it?
Well, I don't know that it's a challenge so much as a gift in a way. I think, it's helped us find ways of articulating our place alongside all people in society, people of other faiths and people of no faith. It's enabled us to think more around how we fulfill our responsibilities in partnership with others, how we can be people of peace and people of reconciliation, and particularly in terms of serving local communities, that always works better when it's done in partnership with others. So I have absolutely no trouble at all wanting to stand alongside other faith leaders in our communities and speak about both what we have in common and also learn from one another in our differences.
It is rather nice to see that, isn't it? Because I was at the service of Thanksgiving in Chelsea Cathedral on Sunday. Mm-hmm. And that was a really, really uplifting event, wasn't it?
It was. It was absolutely wonderful to see the cathedral so full. I have to say, since I've been here, which is just under a year, that's the fullest I've seen it. So that was a real joy. And as you say, people from all walks of life, different cultures, different faiths represented, bringing the community together. And of course, that's one of the privileges we have as the Church of England, where we are able to provide venues and convene and bring people together for these formal services of thanksgiving, as we're seeing up and down the country at the minute. But yes, you've mentioned the service on Sunday. It was great to have other faith representatives taking part, for example, in both in the procession, but also then in the prayers of intercession and so on. So yeah, an absolute joy.
Have you met the Queen?
I have met her a couple of times. I have to say, since I became Bishop of Chelmsford, I was due to meet her on a couple of other occasions, but either because of COVID or because of her health, they've been cancelled for one reason or another. But I did have to go all diocesan bishops have to go and pay homage to the Queen, which is like swearing allegiance, I suppose, and loyalty to her. It's a kind of formal thing that we have to do. And fascinatingly, it was towards the tailing off of COVID regulations around lockdown. So I wasn't able to meet her face to face, but I had to go down to Buckingham Palace, where I went into what was called the Zoom room, and there was a big screen, and she was at Windsor Castle, and she appeared on the screen, and I did what I needed to do, and then we had a little bit of a chat, and it was remarkable. It was almost like being face to face. I mean, she was resplendent, really, and looking really well at the time. This is several months back. It was just about 10 days, 2 weeks after Prince Philip's funeral, actually. And so she was just coming back into her duties after that. But
she loves the new technology, doesn't she? She just embraces all the new technology. She's so forward thinking, isn't she?
She certainly looked very, very comfortable with it. And yes, as you say, I think perhaps that's another of her gifts and things that perhaps all of us can learn from, is her willingness to embrace change. And there must have been some very, very challenging changes for her to embrace over the years, both personally in her own life, but also in the life of the nation and its approach and attitudes to so many things. But yeah, as you say, she strikes me as someone who's open-minded. I mean, she knows her own mind, so I'm sure it's not done without thought and all of that. But certainly a willingness to engage with new ideas and new ways of doing things.
And how are you getting on in the role?
Oh, thank you. Yes, I mean, enjoying it very much for the most part. It is a very, very large diocese, as you know, the whole of Essex and East London. So there are still many places I've yet to visit, and every day brings new experiences and new people to meet. But it is a huge privilege, and I'm very much enjoying it.
Thank you very much for being with me today. It really is good of you. Bishop Guli, who is the Bishop of Chelmsford, the Right Reverend Dr. Guli Francis Decani, who is the Bishop of Chelmsford.